surround, I'll hold you down. I'ma always be right here, yeah, I'ma be right here. Hey, 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 yeah, I'ma always be right here. Hey, 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 yeah, I'ma always be right.
So this is the first, hello. So to a new series on the miracles of John, and we're looking at John chapter 2 and the miracle of Jesus changing the water into wine. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to read it, and we're going to just sort of chat through it and see where it leads us, because that's what we're going to do. The quote that was up there a few moments ago was, so I'm going to start with working out why John put it in his gospel in the first place. And the reason for that is because he tells us why he's writing the gospel. And that's in chapter 20. And it says, Jesus did many other miraculous signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. So the reason why John put these, as he calls them, signs, so he doesn't just call them miracles, they're not just kind of amazing things, they are signs, and they are signs that show the divinity of Jesus, that Jesus is not just a human being, but Jesus is something more than that. Jesus is the Son of God, is the Christ, is the Saviour, is our liberator. And not only that, but that knowing that these are signs that if we believe in Jesus, then we can have life in his name, life in all its fullness, as it says in John 10:10. And the other point is a verse that we talked about this morning, which is the Word became flesh and lived for a while among us. So there's that element of the Word, the uncreated one, who becomes human and embodies kind of humanity. And so we have, in Jesus, John tells us that we have these two joint images. The first, that's the... So we have these two images of God made flesh, the Word made flesh in Jesus, and these signs which are to show us that that Jesus was the Son of God. So with that as sort of introduction, we are just going to read through. So chapter 2, it says, on the third day, and you think, on the third day of what? Well, I can tell you. We have John the Baptist's testimony about kind of the Spirit coming down from heaven, and John the Baptist saying, I've seen and I testify that this, Jesus, is the Son of God. And then it says the next day, John was there again, and then two of his disciples became disciples of Jesus. That's sort of Andrew and Peter. And then it says the next day, Jesus decided to leave for Galilee and kind of found Philip and Nathanael. So the third day is after he's gathered some of his disciples. So his disciples are really new people, new members of the gang, basically. So on the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Now, who here has been to a wedding? Yeah, most of us have been to a wedding. All of us have been to weddings. It is a human thing to do. It is a very human celebration. You can't think of anything much more human than a wedding. And Jesus' mother was there. So you get the feeling that, she probably may have known. This is speculation, obvs. But, maybe she knew the mother of the bride or the groom, and she'd been invited. And just out of politeness, they invited Jesus as well. And his disciples, who had only joined the gang in the previous 2 days. So at this wedding, there were a whole group of young 20-something single men. And that may or may not explain when the wine was gone. And when the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." And so I'm not the first person, I should point out. Some theologians have speculated that it was because of the disciples being there that they ran out of wine. But it's interesting to point out, because we, in the Western world, we are individualist. So we think in terms of individuals. So I think I've mentioned this before, but if you're asked to describe yourself, then most Westerners would say, "I am an employee, I am a husband, I am a father, I am a son, I am a lawyer, I am this, that, and the other." Whereas in kind of most parts of the world, they see themselves as part of community. So we're very individualistic. I am. So I've done it all wrong, haven't I? So I am introverted. I am an employee. I'm a lawyer. I'm a this, that, and the other. Whereas most parts of the world would see themselves in connection with family and relations and things like that. And the consequence of that is that when things go bad for us, we feel guilt, because guilt is an individual thing. I have failed to live up to my own standards, and I feel guilt about that. Whereas in most parts of the world, you feel shame, because shame is that you have brought on, you have done something which has shamed the family or the community. That you've done something wrong which it reflects badly on those around you. Whereas in the West, we tend to think when we've done things badly, they just reflect badly on me personally. So it's for wine to run out at a wedding was obviously a bit of a disaster. They have no more wine. So Jesus says, "Dear woman," which is an intriguing way to kind of speak to your mother. "Dear woman, why do you involve me?" Jesus replied, "My time has not yet come." And this is one of those odd phrases which, in fact, this whole interaction is a really odd interaction. And in truth, I don't think anyone really knows what's going on in this little section. So he says, "Dear woman," and interestingly, Mary only appears one other time in John, which is when she's at the foot of the cross. And there he also describes her as woman. He says, "Woman, here's your son," and he refers her to the John who wrote the gospel, and it says, "John, look after my mother," effectively. But he describes her as woman there as well. So who knows? Maybe it's a term of endearment. But "Dear woman, why do you involve me?" Jesus replied. Effectively, another translation I've seen is, "What does that have to do with you and me?" It's not our wedding. It's someone else's problem. That classic kind of line that we've all tried and failed with. And Jesus also does fail. But he says, "My time has not yet come." And that's interesting, because he's gathering his disciples. So something has started. And he's met John the Baptist. And John the Baptist has declared, "This is the Son of God." And Nathanael has already said, "This is the Son of God." So Jesus has started. So what is it that he's slightly concerned about? I mean, we know in John 17, which is when Jesus is praying, and this is just before the crucifixion, he says, after Jesus said this, he looked towards heaven and prayed, "Father, the time has come." So we know what the time is. The time is the crucifixion. Is when actually he has to go to the cross and suffer and die. Now, did Jesus know that then? Did he know that actually by doing a miracle, that would set in course a series of events that would result in his suffering and death? And actually, he was quite keen to put that off by a day or two. But his mother completely ignored him, which is great. That's what mothers do. That's fantastic. And his mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now, once again, we can only speculate. Did she see something? Did she know that actually Jesus was capable of performing a miracle? Or was it him basically saying, "Well, Jesus and his mates can pop down the offie and get some more wine"? I mean, we don't know what she had in mind when she said that, other than she knew that he could sort something out. But we don't know what. Now, nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, which is an interesting point just to drop in, that these are for ceremonial washing. So there's something purifying about this. So there are 6 stone water jars, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. Now, in a spare moment this afternoon, I worked out how many bottles of wine that was. So, other than those who already know the answer, how many bottles of wine do you think are contained in 6 stone water jars, each holding between 20 and 30 gallons? 900. 900 bottles of wine were in those jars. 900 bottles. This is Chateauneuf de Pape. That's a 30 quid bottle of wine. That's £27,000 worth of wine, because it's the finest wine. Extraordinary. I mean, this is off the scale in terms of what happened. So Jesus said to the servants, fill the jars with water. So they filled them to the brim. And then he said, now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet. And they did so, and the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. And he did not realize where it had come from, though the servants had drawn the water, they knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside and said, everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. But you have saved the best till now. This, the first of his miraculous signs, Jesus performed in Cana of Galilee. He thus revealed his glory, and his disciples put their faith in him. Now, I just want us to talk about the practical realities of suddenly producing 900 bottles of wine at the end of a wedding party. It's not very Christian, is it? Or it's not how we have come to regard Christianity. Because Christianity has a sort of, almost like a sort of a slightly killjoy attitude. But this is God made flesh. And the first miracle, which is reported in John, is of something quite utterly extraordinary. In real terms, ignore the spiritual symbolism and all that. In actual practicalities, that's extraordinary. 900 bottles of wine goes a very long way. That is, yes, it goes a very long way. So that's just the reality of it. So, and you also think, it's such because people obviously question the miracles, and did they happen, did they not? It is such an odd miracle to make up. You wouldn't create this as a made-up miracle. Because all of Jesus' other miracles are ones which feed in directly to his mission. So, you heal a blind man, and is it Isaiah or whatever? He heals the sick, he raises the dead, he opens the eyes of the blind, he releases the prisoners, and whatever. So those miracles fit. They fit the narrative. Jesus healing at distance, as he does later on, and the feeding the 5,000, he's fulfilling a need. He's feeding the hungry. So all of those fit the narrative, the mission statement. This one doesn't. This one is helping out someone. This is your everyday human problem, where something just has gone wrong in a wedding. But yet Jesus steps in and does something remarkable. Now, if one is going to draw spiritual parallels, then you can say, actually, this is an indication of the party that we'll have in heaven, and that this is the heavenly banquet. This is a precursor of the heavenly banquet, and all of that is true. But it is such an extraordinary, and I think it's Is it symbolic of something in the past? I mean, Jesus is our saviour. Moses was a saviour back in Exodus. What was Moses' first miracle to Pharaoh? Turning the river Nile into blood, turning water into blood. So there's an echo of Exodus, the first one of the plagues. So that there is an echo of the past as well. So there's an echo of the past and there's an echo of the future, in the sense of, sorry, I'm assuming it's red wine. That's obviously kind of. I was just talking to Abby early on. Wouldn't it be fun if 2 of the jars were red, 2 of the jars were white, and 2 were rosé? I mean, sparkling, little bit of pomaine. Happy days. Or what was it? Baby sham. That'd be a lot more than 900 bottles of baby sham. Kind of those little. So what's the important thing that what one's meant to do now is say, what's the lesson? What do we learn from this? Well, I guess it's a simple one, which is that if Jesus can do that to water, what can he do to you? The whole point of John is that he is telling these signs as a way of explaining that Jesus, encouraging us to believe and continue believing in Jesus as the Son of God, so that whoever believes in him will be filled with life. And it's that sense of, if you come to Jesus and, what's the phrase? Do whatever he tells you, then we will be transformed, just in the same way that the water was transformed into wine, and our lives will be transformed into something dramatic and special.